Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jana Carole. I'm the education coordinator here at AIFF. And we're so fortunate today to have not only the director of Anchor Point, Holly Tuckett, but two of her key subjects of the film, Kelly Martin and Lacey England. And we're here to try to get a little bit more out of all of you about this experience of Anchor Point. I'm going to start with you, Holly.
Okay.
It was such a stunningly visual and insightful documentary. And I feel like audiences come to a film like this, maybe thinking a little bit like they know what they're going to see at times. And I think that you have managed to surprise us from so many angles by making it not only about these women that we see here and other women achieving gender equity in a very male-dominated, testosterone-driven world of wildland fighters, but then there's the whole other angle of the fire science and the ever-evolving understanding of fire ecology and how we don't necessarily need to dominate it, perhaps. So I'm wondering, from your standpoint, Holly, which of those stories came first? Like, what was the original seed of the idea that made you do Anchor Point?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to Ashland for making us a part of the festival. We're very honored to be part of the festival, and there's a lot of great films in the festival that we feel really blessed to be a part of such great company. So I really appreciate Ashland for taking the time to view our film and actually consider it for the festival. So I hope you all enjoyed watching the film as much as I enjoyed making it. I would say that which came first, the chicken or the egg? I knew nothing about fire science. So obviously that part came as I was watching these women do what they do in the environment that they do it. And really what I was researching when I began came from a student that I had mentored introduced me to a wildland firefighter who was getting ready to whistleblow on a situation that was happening within the BLM in Boise, Idaho. And she blew the whistle before we could even get started with production. And it just made her as a character more difficult to create the story around. And I had started doing research and came across Lacey in a REI video, and in doing more research, then found out about Kelly and how she testified in Congress. And I was like, yeah, these women would be great to meet, but how the hell am I going to do that? And I got introduced through this firefighter that we were originally following to a woman that had been to WTREX, and she basically, gave us the information to make the contact with WTREX. And it just so happened that I had no idea Kelly was going to be there. I had met Lacey on a phone call, an introductory phone call, because she was the public information officer for the WTREX event. So I was secretly hoping that somehow I would get Lacey to say yes to being involved in the documentary. I didn't know her whole story, though. That I didn't understand, what her story would be. I just felt that her charisma on camera and her comfortability on camera was amazing. And you always want one of those characters that's going to really, people are going to bond to in some way. And so that's pretty much how it started out. I started out with the angle of, harassment and, what's the story there. But yeah, didn't expect to have it take a left turn on me and turn me on to fire science and understanding how important it is for our ecology.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll circle back to that fire science piece, but I'm sure here in Southern Oregon we've all had our share of rural/urban fires over the last couple of years, and I think that audiences here also have seen many documentaries about fires and firefighting, and they do tend to be very victim oriented and dominating the fire oriented, and it's still, I think, very emotionally really a struggle for local people who have so recently been so close to fire. But that, I think, that being said, you have brought a lot of new angles to the ecology piece, and I know that I think it was Lacey who talked about, you know, there being a good scaling up a good fire, and that part of it. I feel like maybe just giving each of you, Kelly and Lacey, your opportunity to tell us how your own thinking about fire maybe evolved, not so much during the film, but what you brought to the film. Kelly, do you want to tell us about that?
You know, I think growing up in the Midwest, and, I think back about our own like personal family values and beliefs, where we spent a lot of time up at my grandma's cabin. It was a time where, kids didn't have cell phones. They could run around and play outside, and parents didn't worry about them. And then my folks were just really supportive of like being rough and tumble, be it in, sports or, fishing and hunting. I mean, it was just kind of a given that was, how we were, born and raised. And so that connection with the earth and the elements of the earth as a child growing up, just really, that's where I had fun. That's where I played. I was not a very good student in school. I struggled sitting in a desk and sitting in four walls. So the firefighting profession really, it really grew on me, because it really drew on all the aspects that I really love about life, about the plants, the animals, the adventure travel, the camaraderie. I just can't imagine a more intersecting life than fire, with all the things that really just made me feel like a whole human being. Granted, there was definitely some challenges when you look around and you don't see yourself, you don't see women firefighters, but at the same time, it was like, that's what I want to do. Those guys are having fun. They're doing the things that I want to do, and there should be no reason that I should be and not have that same opportunity. So I remember thinking that I'm going to go for it, and be it as it may, the stumbles, the things that we've. Sorry, I have my phone next to me. I should just shut it off. And the fact that the element of fire really spoke to me, and you'll certainly see it in the documentary about living in a teepee. So I really took on that spirit, that element of fire, and that's been with me my entire career, and still is to this day. So working with Holly and Lacey and all the other great women, I think there's a real feminine spirit with fire that I just really was drawn to as well. And so I'm a huge supporter of more women entering wildland fire. There should be no reason that women should be denied these opportunities, but it's not without its challenges. And so I think Holly did a great job of really, respectfully kind of showing people what the challenges are as we try to work our way through this career.
Right. I mean, the gender equity issues, certainly, that's such a universal, overarching theme. You rarely meet a woman who hasn't experienced that somewhere
Exactly.
And we find that a lot of professions end up being more testosterone driven than we would have liked. And I think, Lacey, you definitely graphically at times gave a real clear picture of what the real gender equity issues were. And I'd sort of like to hear from you, though as Holly said, you were pretty forthcoming about it, but how was it working with Holly, and how did she manage to bring out of you what it was about your story that we all ended up feeling so moved by?
Well, she's a good filmmaker. She's a good interviewer, so that helped. But to be honest, at the very beginning, I was hesitant. As a WTREX group, we had previous interactions with the media that did not turn out the way we wanted them to, and so we were a little shy the next time somebody reached out and said, "Hey, we want to create a story about this organization." I had a couple phone calls with Holly and Marissa, trying to gauge their level of sincerity, really, to put it bluntly. Like, what kind of story are they trying to tell, and do I trust them that they're not gonna turn it into something we don't want? WTREX is a very special thing to all of the people involved, and it is it's a proactive movement. It's a very positive movement. We are working to do things and create things. Yes, there are really hard stories that get shared during those WTREX events. And it is a time of connection and healing for a lot of people that haven't had the opportunity with other firefighters. And also, that's not the focal point. So we didn't want a documentary just highlighting everybody's worst moments in fire. That wasn't the point of WTREX. But Holly really made a case for, that's not what I want to do. Other people, that story is out there, and your organization, your group is doing amazing things moving forward and working on creating change and improving fire culture. That was the story. That's what we want to talk about. And after a few phone calls, I guess I just decided to trust her. she made she made a good case for herself, and when she showed up in Florida at the first WTREX event that she was at, that was the first time any of us had met in person. And
was she still being auditioned a little bit then?
Yeah, 100%. For sure. She and her partner showed up jet lagged, and they had flown all night, driven from the airport. They showed up, and I was like, "Oh, hey, in like 15 minutes you're gonna do a little introduce yourself to the whole group of like 40 people, and get them on your side." So kind of didn't mean to throw them under the bus immediately, but it happened a little bit. But they did great. They introduced themselves. Reception was a little bit icy at first.
Super icy.
Yeah. Holly and Marissa broke the ice, and for the next few days, what really helped was they didn't come in with an agenda. They didn't come in saying, "This is the movie we're making, so please say some things that help us make that movie." They said, "This is the story we want to tell about you and what you all are doing. So tell us what's important to you." They followed our lead. And I think that helped us trust them off, very quickly. They didn't come in with an idea already formed.
No.
Right. I think I'd love to hear about that meeting from your standpoint, Holly. And I just want to throw out there that the WTREX is so, I think everything that resonates about this film is that what women bring to firefighting and to probably any workplace is that teamwork. And, I think it's worth mentioning that your team is comprised primarily of certainly above the line. It's all women. I assume that the below the line as well is very much crewed by women. So I'd like to hear about what the audition sounded like from your angle, and why you've decided to crew your films in this way.
Well, as I was explaining to them that it wasn't our intent to have an agenda, and that that we really were there. I guess for somebody who has not gone to film school, you know, ethnographer would, I guess, be kind of how I see myself as a filmmaker. I like the cinema verite. I like being in people's worlds and letting things unfold and seeing how life unfolds for the characters that I find. That is how I prefer to tell stories, and let the characters bring what they have to the table, and we kind of in our interactions and relationships over time, you know, the story unfolds. And they were definitely, I was like, man, this is a group. This is just definitely not. They're not taking my jokes. They're not like. And I remember somebody at the very end, when I said, "Do you have any questions?" Someone yelled out, "Do you have your cotton panties on?" And I said, I kind of paused for a minute, and I was like, "I'm doing this," and I dropped my pants. And said, "Yes, I do, because I came fire ready. I'm going to be having swiss and swass with all the rest of y'all." And from that moment, the whole room burst into laughter. And I remember Kelly and Lacey had told me early on, Kelly's not going to give you an interview no matter what. And Kelly came up to me right after everyone kind of broke, and she came walking up to me. She said, "You're hilarious, and I think that you're going to fit in here just great." So, yeah, it was a bold move.
And the cotton panties are that you don't wear polyester when you're firefighting.
No, you do not. It will melt, and that's you don't want your underwear melting to your ass. So
you really don't. Yeah.
So yeah. It was one of those filmmaker make yourself vulnerable moments for me.
It paid off.
It did. Yeah.
I think it paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are all the winners having seen the film. But I do have to say that I feel like Anchor Point has come at such an important time in history. I mean, with Deb Holland as the first female confirmed Native American cabinet post, let alone Secretary of the Interior, I see this trending in a positive way for women. Do you see your film as something that is part of that forward movement?
I will say that when Deb was picked by Biden, I was not unhappy with that choice for a multitude of reasons. Serendipitously, one of those reasons is because my film is coming out the same year that she's being sworn in. So yes, my hope for this film is to use it as a platform for the women of W-Trex and the women that work for the Department of Interior as a whole. There's a lot of agencies that are under that and the USDA that are affected by a culture that is very misogynistic and patriarchal. Yeah. And my goal would be to get it in front of Deb Holland and you know, her, Jackie Spears, you know, some of the women that testified, you know, that were part of the hearing in Congress. Like, yes, I want them to see this movie, and I want them to do something for the culture of fire. I want change to happen. And you know, it's encouraging. After our first screening, one of our firefighters that's in the film actually said, "I'm going to show this." She was on our call just like this, a Q&A kind of thing after the film. And she said, I'm going to, she was at her firehouse, and she said, "I'm going to brave and show it to my deputy chief." She did so. And he immediately said, "This was eye-opening, and this needs to go to HR. This needs to go up the chain to the higher ups. And we need to send 2 of the younger female folks in our unit to W-Trex on the company dime, not their training dime. And so, yes, this film I made this film to make change. I did not make it for any other reason.
Yeah, and I think that you've taken great strides toward that. And speaking of swearing in, I think that we all think of firefighting as such a dangerous and a scary occupation. And yet, in a way, I think one of the scariest moments in the film was when Kelly had to testify before Congress. And I'd like to hear about that from you, Kelly. But first, Holly, I'm wondering, what was that always seen as an anchor point, as it were, in your film, in terms of how the film and the story really took a turn when Kelly found the courage to go and speak there?
I had hoped. I mean, there was a lot of trepidation for Kelly to be involved in the film, and I respect her so much for being a part of it. And not only just that, I mean, just braving Congress to go and be a part of trying to make change in the National Park Service, on behalf of other people that wouldn't speak up, couldn't speak up. And so I think, something that powerful, something that huge, it definitely is going to be something that I had hoped we would be able to. It wouldn't have worked in the film had we not had Kelly as a character. So my job was to convince Kelly that this was going to be important, and that just the Congress testimony alone, without getting to know her as a human being, was not going to be as impactful. And she graciously came on with a little bit of trepidation and a little bit of this is not where I feel comfortable, and really opened herself up to me in ways that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, it's such a testament to you as a director, and Kelly, your trust. I mean, I feel like that you were able to reveal so much of yourself, and even the maternal way that you spoke about the forest and the rebirth of a forest after a fire, and all of those different facets of your 30-something years career as a wildfire firefighter. But I still have to ask, which is harder, rappelling out of a helicopter or testifying before Congress?
Well, Lacey was the one that repels, not me. But I think, at one point I was just like, I just want to be done with this. I don't want to continue to kind of talk about it. It's like I felt like I spoke my piece, and I just wanted to kind of go, okay, now it's up to everybody else to kind of dissect what this really means and how we go forward. And I think, and Lacey can probably relate to this as well. It's just it's an amazing career that you just don't want to give up on. And because it just speaks it's so fulfilling, as an individual. And you really have to, I think, when you start, you think about, how do I assimilate? How do I become one of the guys? How do I not stand out? Because I walk into a room and the first thing you see is I'm a woman. And so it's a little bit shocking, I guess, to people. It's just that they don't expect to see a woman. And Lacey, I think, always lays it out really well. It's like, close your eyes and picture a firefighter. Tell everybody that. And they don't picture, a woman doing that. But
right.
So when we enter into the work like this, it's like, I do not want to stand out. I don't want any special treatment. I want to work just as hard as the guys. I think it's really important to develop that credibility and respect and trust with your teammates. And then you start to see the subtleties of the differences between men and women in this organization. And then you have to ask yourself, do I bring it up? Do I be, that person that talks about, that wants to bring up these, issues that are different between men and women? And so I just didn't want to do that. So then you find ways to normalize things. And so you go through this life, if you will, normalizing, I don't want to call it bad behavior, but it's like, how come I'm the one that, why do I feel like I have to work, way more harder and prove myself time and time again than the guys that I'm working with? And so there's this frustration that just kind of builds up, but you don't want to give up. At least I never wanted to give up. And I thought that was really, really important. So I think there's a trajectory through one's career, as you start kind of thinking about, where you go from here. And towards the end, I was like, okay, I've been at this, 30 some odd years, and I could retire, and I don't have a family. And so some of the things that happened to me when I was young in my career, I stayed silent, because we all know that if you do speak out or speak up, you become labeled, people are resentful. There's, retaliation in very subtle ways and sometimes overt. And so you don't want to call attention to those things. But I think the dare I say, with age comes wisdom. And I just felt like I really wanted to, granted, this doesn't happen to everybody all the time. I don't want to have to cast this as a broad net that this happens to all of us, but I just wanted to bring light to some of the things that I struggled with, in my career. And I wanted to make it very personal, that this is me, this is my story. This isn't everybody's story. And so it's very important to again, not cast that wide net, but then understand that, there are people that leave this profession because they understand, the bullying, the oppression, the inequities. And so they don't make it. And I've seen this time and time throughout my career that really good women, God, I was just almost in tears when I heard Lacey was going to quit and move into a different profession, So when you see the government, spend a lot of time and effort training and getting someone to be super competent, like Lacey, and then have her leave, it's just incredibly hurtful and sad. And I think from the American public needs to know that this is not an isolated incident. So that this is important for people to see that this is going on, and what can we do to, bring a highlight or bring light to, these struggles that we all have. I think most people are going to say, yeah, I can relate to that, or I can relate to that. And it doesn't even have to be wildland fire.
Absolutely.
It could be another profession where there is a gender disparity in the work environment. And so people can go, shake their head and go, I can relate to that. And I think that's, the beauty of this film is that, we don't really want to, it is very juicy to talk about and hear about sexual harassment, but that's not really the big picture here. It's really, yes, it's the peak above the water, that you can see, but there's so much below, that iceberg that's floating around that's under the water that people really don't talk about. And so we really wanted to provide that, opportunity to really say, okay, this is really what's going on under the surface.
And I think that you all were so successful. I think you were all so successful in doing that. Really what shines through is the fortitude, the strength, in spite of. And it does, I think it really does have an overarching, a real universal meaning to all women in every workplace. And Lacey, I think that all women related to where you were in so many ways, and just felt that frustration that you so aptly put forth, sometimes as asides to the camera. I love those moments. So glad that, you know, Holly managed to be there in those private moments. But I also know that audiences would love to know what's happening with you now, Lacey. What's going on with your life?
I'm in nursing school.
Yay.
So I started an accelerated nursing program in May of 2020. What is time anymore?
COVID.
May of 2020, I'm pretty sure. And so I'm in my third semester, and I'll be wrapping up at the end of July 2021, and then I'll get a nursing job. So something, you know, there's a lot of parallels I am discovering as far as work environment goes. You know, it's fast paced, it's team based. There's a lot of communication dynamics at play. Things are shifting really quickly, high stakes decisions.
Sure.
I'm just doing something different with my hands now. But I'm really enjoying it. It's exciting to be starting something new. And, you know, I don't regret spending as much time in fire as I did. I certainly gained an immense amount of experience and skills, and you know, just competency at working in that kind of high stakes team based dynamic.
Well, firefighting is a kind of triage, isn't it? I mean, you do it on a moment to moment basis when you're doing that job, don't you?
Yeah. And you know, I gained a lot of perspective in my years as a firefighter, and I don't regret that at all. And it's also really exciting to be starting something new. So I'm trying to enjoy the new thing without having to throw the old thing away. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure you bring so much with you. And I think the audiences really appreciated just the authenticity that you brought to this film, and just the insights that we were all able to get, largely because you were so willing. And Holly, you were so able to take that ubiquitous sort of patriarchal story and just completely flip it and let us see what that's like when there are women involved. And I think you just did such a masterful job of that. And I think everyone would love to know what's next for Anchor Point. What's next for you?
Well, let's see. Hopefully for Anchor Point, we continue on the festival circuit for quite a while. We've got a number of festivals we're still waiting to hear from. So we're basically now five festivals or smaller award festival type scenarios in at this point. And you know, we probably have another good solid 6 months or 7-8 months to go to try and work through some distribution opportunities. And you know, my hope, every filmmaker's hope, is that their film gets distribution, whether or not this film does or not. This film will have a life because I will ensure that it does. I have been talking with Lania, who is the head person of WTREX, and have relationships with Jeremy Bailey from the Nature Conservancy, and, you know, starting talks with them about doing fundraising kind of screenings. And we're working to develop a scholarship fund for WTREX in order to help female firefighters get to WTREX, because a lot of them come from all over the country to different places in the country, and the travel and the time off and things like that can be costly for a firefighter. So we really want to support the mission of WTREX. And so regardless of whether or not we have distribution, this film will have a life. I got a message from somebody in I think it was New Jersey. They're opening a small art house film theater, and they want us to come and do a private screening. Like, those kinds of things are happening. And,
yes.
You know, as a filmmaker, we live for moments to talk about the work that we've created, and to be able to use this film in order to enact some change and raise awareness and raise money and things like that is really, really important to me. Besides what's next, I'm already in talks with someone that I can't talk about the project because I don't want to jinx it before it happens, but
Yes.
we we'll see if we're talking about creating a docuseries. We'll see what happens. I've got another friend. People are, that's the great thing about being a filmmaker, especially documentary. Everyone brings you people or stories, and they want you to tell those stories. I kind of think that where I'm going to try and create my niche is in telling feminine stories and
Sure.
focusing on the feminine aspect of life. I think that there are so many issues, that topic as an overarching thing brings to. Maybe it's because my dad raised 3 women. I don't know. But even the film surprised him. So he kind of saw himself as being a dad that promoted women and women's issues, but then he also, watching the film, realized in ways that he's still contributing as a man to holding women back in some ways. So we're not saying all men are bad in this film. When women actually contribute to the patriarchy as well. So
Oh yeah.
I think that there's a lot of work still to be done to bring equity in every walk of life for women. And so I kind of feel like that's probably where I'm gonna focus most of my efforts in storytelling for a while until something else presents itself.
So happy to hear that. I think that you have done so much with Anchor Point in forwarding the cause of women in the workplace, and certainly fire culture as well, though that may not have been one of your missions when you set out. You've accomplished a lot, and you've definitely astounded and surprised audiences. I feel so grateful to have met all 3 of you, and that you've taken the time to spend here with us. And I know that all of our audiences at AIFF feel the same way. So thanks, and best of luck to all of you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.